Well, this is a amazing moment when the galactic shaman astrologers are starting to gather again. It's been a couple of years almost since we've spoken, and that time has flown by, and so much has happened. I finally got a video to stay up on YouTube that I did with Emmeline, which is amazing. So go ahead and check that video out about the Taurus North Node ecliptic and taking the bull by the horns, even if you're considered insane. That was a very good video, and I feel encouraged that what we are going to present today will hopefully not be censored, but we're going to look into Scorpio. And when Emmeline and I spoke, we spoke about how Taurus really anchors your experience. It's a fixed sign. You want to get hold of the soil and nature and earth so that you can feel your body steady. And I just so happened to open a page about the Taurus North Node by Jan Spiller. This is an old classic book. And Taurus North Node, they need to rely upon themselves, and their sense of worth has to come from within. The power is within. So much of what I am going to say is rooted in the power that is within me, because I'm very connected to the soil and earth. And that's how I can go to the Scorpio South Node, which is that deep dive into those hidden and taboo and very personal spaces that sometimes are so private we don't want to go there, and we don't want to reveal what's down there. But I had a challenge this week, and whenever I get challenged, that brings up my Venus conjunct Antares, which is the heart of the Scorpion, because I get challenged, and then I'm like, okay, yeah, like, well, we better find out what that is about. And I saw a post from a man that said an average 22-year-old male today has roughly the same testosterone level as a 67-year-old had in 2000. And that testosterone has fallen by 50% in 2 decades, and no one is talking about it. So before I responded to that, I did a lot of research. And before I shared that information myself, I really looked into it with all different kinds of research. So we have some researchers who are way over here with it, and some researchers who kind of poo-poo this situation. But for testosterone to have fallen a full 50% in 20 years is pretty significant. And when I looked at every, across the board, they all agreed that it had something to do with plastics, because plastics are an endocrine disruptor. And from my perspective, Taurus and nature and the North Node being there has much to do with the care and preservation of that earthy substance, that soil. And so I started posting about plastics, which are used in organic farming. I've seen big organic farms with like the whole field covered with plastic, with their seedlings grown in plastic, with their food delivered in, Olivia's Organics is delivered in a plastic container, and that stuff never breaks down. I mean, it breaks down into minute little pieces, but it actually never goes away. It just becomes tiny little fragmented pieces of plastic. Even 1,000 years from now, there will still be itty teeny bits of fragmented plastic. So that is a real concern for me, because for me, I also mentioned in the video with Emmeline that I am more masculine than most of the young males now. And I just had the experience, so this is absolute experience, of going out to dinner with my daughter. And my server was, I believe, male. And I'm not trying to discredit anyone. I don't want people to feel bad. I am not homophobic. I am not against sexuality in any way, but the server was so feminine and very stressed that it was painful for me. And there were two servers, and they were very slight, very small, not what you would expect like the average 22-year-old to look like. And then when I looked at the health effects of loss of testosterone for these young men, they're very stressed. It causes anxiety. It also causes loss of bone density. Like there's a lot of problems with the loss of testosterone. And then I kept going down the rabbit hole on this, which is Scorpio, okay, to, well, why isn't the government regulating this? Like, what's going on? And then I go down another rabbit hole going, well, you know, there could be an alien agenda in this. So before I start getting into all of that, which I wrote a blog and you can read it, I just want you to know that the nature of Scorpio and the Scorpio Eclipse, which is what we have coming up, has to get into those taboo subjects. And we've got across the board taboo subjects from the genitals happening here in the United States right now that we can all talk about. But I've drawn the chart and it is on Lalita Astrology for people to see. And as my blog indicated, asteroid Pecker, which in astrology is what we use for penis, is conjunct the part of fortune here in South Woodstock, Vermont, on the descendant. So I wrote a little bit about basically how lucky I am to have a partner who has his testosterone intact, and he's basically becoming a god here in Vermont. People call him nonstop to do everything from, you know, someone messaged him and asked him to come and clean her sheep shed, her sheep poop. I mean, unbelievable. They're like, he's painting a house right now. They're stopping by and saying, can you paint my place too? So the labor shortage that we're having here in Vermont, I believe is a testosterone shortage. And that may hurt people. This could be a very hurtful conversation. You may feel defensive when I talk about these things, but Scorpio needs to go into it. Okay, we need to really go into this area of the genitalia, of the deep taboo subjects, find out what's going on here, and find out what this young man was saying about how no one is talking about this drop in testosterone. I feel for this person, and it's because I love humanity. So if anyone wants to jump in and speak about what they see for the eclipse or what Scorpio means, we've got the South Node in Scorpio for this whole year. Okay, so just go ahead and jump in wherever you feel. Unmute yourself.
Hi, it's been a long time, it feels like. I think one of the first things that we should think about when we think about this South Node eclipse in Scorpio is that both the South Node and the Moon can have karmic associations, things that we need to revisit and relearn and or reevaluate or kind of be held accountable for. And the other thing is that, you know, since this is a lunar eclipse, this is the opposition of the sun and the moon, with the moon in Scorpio, that the moon is in fall in Scorpio. So this is one of her most difficult energies. And I think it's because the moon is your emotional intelligence. And this is the sign of those deep, very hard emotions that you kind of have a hard time dwelling in, because they can be really hit you at your core. So this is setting up for an eclipse that can perhaps, if it's hitting a sensitive point in your chart, be deeply emotional, and because the moon is also the body, that it may not come through in a very thinking, rational type of an experience. So this is one of the reasons, like, why I felt very strongly that we would have this conversation today, because this is not exactly an easily connected with energy. It's a deeply felt energy that could feel very troubling if you're not actively processing it. Certainly for me, this eclipse falls in my 6th house. This is, the house of everyday work, mundane things, health and healing and stuff like that. So, I work in healthcare, so it's these deeply kind of troubling things that are happening in our healthcare system that are popping up for me. And how are we going to continue to do that work? And I think that's the other thing with this eclipse, is that it is a very tight by degree square with Saturn in Aquarius. Saturn is also karma. It is hard work. It is, what are you committing to put that work in over the long haul? Can you make that effort for this change? And so, if, to Lolita's point of how things that are affecting our work, and if the, with this low testosterone, how committed can we be to make certain difficult changes to create a better shift for the future? Because with an eclipse, especially a lunar eclipse, which is a culmination, it is like a turning point where we have got to kind of stop and really let something go. What can you let go? And it's not just the genitals. Scorpio is historically kind of associated with the organs of elimination. This is the colon and the rectum. It's shit. What can you release? So it literally may feel like shittiness. We might get censored about that. I'm sorry. Saying the S word. But it is, this is it, because this is one of the what is making that rich compost to regrow things when things come back around in next Taurus season, and things are growing up from the dirt, which is compost, which is manure, which is all that stuff. So what are you putting in your manure? Is it lots of plastics that'll always break down, like Lolita said, or are you releasing things and letting that go so other things can grow in it and use those analyte and metabolites to grow and create something beautiful? So those are my first initial impressions of this eclipse. Like, what is it that you're releasing? And then, if you're letting it go, how can it be used in a way to make something else beautiful?
Go ahead, Emily. Yeah, thank you, Holly. Let's just keep flowing, folks.
Cool. Yes, I kind of sense this connection, obviously, like with Scorpio and Taurus, Scorpio being the shame. So you have shame attached to these issues that we're talking, not that you have to have shame, but most of us will have a degree of shame, right? Talking about these and other issues, and or whatever issues are coming up, like shame about, I don't know, like even people feeling shame about mental health issues, or simple thing of, oh, I feel depressed, and there's a kind of attachment to, if you say that, then what's going to happen, and is that going to go on some medical record, or and there's and so we keep ourselves hidden to a degree, because we think if we share these heavy emotions, will we be accepted? Can we accept ourselves? Will we attack ourselves? Will we self-sabotage? And ironically, it's the same thing as not expressing and sharing, because it's then it becomes held and tension and kind of cancerous, actually, because that water element, that fixed water, would then become a toxic breeding ground, like in a bog, if you don't bring the flow. And that mother energy, because it's like the moon is the mother, and she's gone right deep into the waters, and then Taurus is her space of like real like homeliness and sensual expression. So I feel like, you know, it's pulling up the dregs of things and anchoring into things that we would otherwise avoid. But the freedom to express that Taurus initiates us in is so powerful. Like a tender, gentle, you know, a Venusian expression of our senses, which would, you know, through the throat, because Taurus is seen medically around the throat, because it's the one after the head. You go down from the round and then into the throat, which is cool because the vocal cords are very related, as people have, you know, shown images, to the womb. So there's like a sense of expressing, and, you know, and that sensuality of expression and voice and kissing something, being close and embracing. So what, you know, what if we let our voice express and be free, which is Uranus, that freedom, what will come out, you know, and if we just speak, what will come out, and if we sing, what will come out, and if we dance, what will come out. And I think, yeah, there's a space of freedom there. And the moon is kind of like, although she's in fall, in a way she's like giving herself to holding that scorpionic space, isn't she, and actually like lending herself as an offering, you know, actually we're going to make space for this. Although, yeah. And then I think, what else was I thinking about? Yeah, I think with Aries, like, I'm sure we're going to get to Aries. But I think, you know, with Venus and Jupiter in Aries initiating this powerhouse, but with awareness of our wounds because of Chiron, it's sort of like, can we go forwards with this awareness and sort of trailblaze with this embodiedness, you know, that masculine energy that we're going to speak about. But yeah, I'll leave it there, because I'm sure we're going to go into these topics.
Nice introduction. So the moon in Scorpio is a fall, and Emmeline is saying that that's also a really nice place for us to go into what we need to express from Taurus. What is that expression that needs to come through? And then Holly's saying, you know, and also what do we need to shit out at this point? And we may get censored for that. But speaking of the many things that have been brought to me by my clients, sexuality and sacred sexuality and the eros gamos, in the thema mundi, Scorpio is the 5th house of romance, sexuality, creativity, and where Venus finds her joy. And what I'm finding, and what Emmeline and I kind of started the conversation, was that the muddying that's happening right now with the pronouns and everything. I had a client yesterday who happens to have a north, so she's having a nodal return, a north node in Taurus and a south node in Scorpio, and she has a Cancer ascendant, so her chart sets up the thema mundi. And I was amazed to have a conversation with her, because she does not follow me on social media, and yet we were both at exactly the same place. She has a 15-year-old male, and she's doing everything she can to protect his testosterone. And she looked in her refrigerator, and her refrigerator was full of stuff with plastic, you know, and yet she buys organic and really high quality food. So she's going, what is going on here? It's like we've suddenly awakened to this call, really, this cry from the male going, oh my gosh, protect me, help me. So Scorpio allows us to go into those taboo subjects and be like, wow, I mean, by 2045, some researchers say we won't even have sperm. There will not be sperm. At the current rate, there will not be sperm, and penises are shrinking. And then on the flip side of that, another client sent this very disturbing book that I cannot even read because we will be censored if I read this page. And this book is being distributed in schools for children 4 to 8 years old. And it is so so you can't read it, I know, and I can't read it to you, but it's on my Facebook page. But it is so, it's almost pornographic, folks. And this is for 4 to 8 years old. It is being distributed in schools. It's called My Body is Growing. And a client sent it to me and said that she, her cousin has children elementary school age, and she took them out when this book came home. So the other thing that is happening right now is this gender issue, and also the putting in of sexual information to a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old who really should be looking for dandelions and making fairy forts. So there's this other thing that seems to be really profoundly upsetting, such that people are taking their kids out of school. And in that book, there is a discussion of having intercourse with one's siblings for a 4-year-old. And it's not prohibiting it. It's actually kind of encouraging it. And I read that and I was like, what is that? And so my client friend said that this is actually a court case now, that this is being distributed in elementary schools. So we really need to look at what is going on. Are there weird agendas going on? Like, why would the public education system be putting this out, and yet also not being careful of the amount of plastic that's in our food industry that is affecting our boys? Is something going on? And that's how Scorpio actually works. Again, because the ruler of my ascendant Venus is at Antares, the heart of the Scorpion, that's how I work. That's the steersman of my life. I go, wait, what's that? What's that? How did we get to that? And I keep going down, this rabbit hole that seems very dark and deep. And then people go, oh, Lalita, you're just spreading fear. Just shine your light. And I'm going, love, light, and clueless, folks. Love, light, and clueless. Go ahead. Love, light, and clueless. My light, if you walk out into my yard, folks, I live in paradise. Okay? And I live in paradise. And my life is light, which is why I can go down into the scorpionic depths. It doesn't bother me. There's no problems there for me. And the other thing, I was having this discussion with the client who's protecting her 15-year-old, that she goes to a homeschool group, and there are some woke parents, that's called woke, I don't know what that means, who have little girls who are frilly and girlish and wearing pink toenail polish and wants to wear dresses and want to have ribbons in their hair, and the mother's going, call her they, call her them, call her they and them. And this is still a major issue for me. Like, I don't know how to deal with this. And I wonder if this little girl is getting to have the true organic soul embodied experience that she wants, if she has to have this whole pronoun thing going on all the time. So I just really wonder where these agendas are coming from. And I know the answer because I talked to Laura McConnell this morning. And Laura always has this massive view. But I'm like, what is going on here with all this weird sexual mush? And that is, I believe, what we have to look into with the Scorpio South node. So go ahead, who wants to jump in there?
So I'm just going to clarify for someone who maybe is not as familiar with astrology that one of the reasons why we're going to this conversation is because the ruling planet of Scorpio is Mars. So Mars is kind of the lord of this eclipse, and Mars also rules Aries, which is where Venus is located. So we're looking at Mars, seeing that there is this review of this Martian energy from its Scorpio expression, because the South Node is there. But that would also affect its house of Aries. And in general, Mars in astrology is that principle of the male expression, of that hero, of the pioneer, of the take charge, investigated, action oriented individual. It is literally, the circle with the arrow shooting out, which is that projected energy. We sometimes call that energy in like the Asian, West Eastern, yin, with yin being female and yang being that projected energy male. So Mars is currently in a feminine sign, which is Pisces. Venus is in one of in Aries, which is one of Mars sign. And so we have this muddled energy right now of a very yang feminine energy, yang, very much more yang Venus than she likes to be, and we have Mars more feminized in more feminine energy than he's typically comfortable in. So it is reflecting this muddled and tamped down energy of what the original or the ancient templates have been. That Mars, who really loves to be in Aries, which is like bursting forth and taking charge and making a decision and doing, and he's in this more receptive Pisces energy. But perhaps that's reflecting a place where Mars has to kind of sit back and like undergo this South Node kind of karmic review. And at the same time, the feminine Venus energy is in this take charge, but where the energy itself in the stars isn't kind of reflecting our natural or historic energy templates. And we are seeing that also, like what Lalita's talking about, in a greater spectrum of gender expression. And so there's this whole conversation of what is gender and what is sexuality, and how do these hormones that reflect that, testosterone has typically been the male hormone and it is decreasing. Estrogen and progesterone are the female hormones, and this is why we, in our more focused astrological group, listen to videos by John Gray, PhD, which talks about men are for Mars, women are Venus, which is geared towards relationships, but it talks about how these hormones in our body influence us to act in a certain way, and how changes in those hormones are going to create changes in our population and how different people interact with each other. So overall, that decrease in testosterone has this subtle overall effect of making everyone perhaps a little bit more yin or estrogen dominant. But if we're all more receptive, and then who is taking charge? Who is leading the way, and who is fighting for us? Because Mars is not just the hero, but he's the defender and the protector. And one of the Martian best expressions is of that warrior who is protecting his loved ones. And that Mars in Pisces is that spiritual warrior who is protecting those for the greater good. What is that greater good? And just incidentally, Lolita, I was looking where the asteroid New Hampshire was, and it's right conjunct Mars and Neptune. And it's really interesting that we're up in here in New England, that we are like driving this conversation, because we are both very local, and we both know these Aries guys who are like taking charge and doing stuff, and And my Aries guy is always like, come on, let's go outside. Let's do some yard work. Let's, rake all the leaves. You're going to mow the lawn. I'll mow the lawn. You do the weed whacking. We'll get it done. And in myself, I am always amazed at the amount of energy my Aries man has. He can go and go and go. And to see that dampened by trends in society is it's a sad thing. So I think I'll stop there. I'll let you guys jump in.
Yeah, Emmeline, do you mind if I jump in quick? Because I just remembered what Claude had to say about the testosterone thing. So when I asked Claude about this, how does, well, I asked Claude, and of course he's so Aries, he has no idea. He's just like John Gray's video. I have no idea. His butt is on the chair. He can't think. He's a doer. I have no idea. I have no opinion about it. Lalita, you're in charge. Because I am the thinker, and I also have this massive, long memory and this huge, galactic librarian responsibility, and Claude just does stuff, okay? And otherwise, he doesn't think about it. And that, if you watch those videos by John Gray, I was like, there it is. I mean, actually, when I try and engage Claude in some emotional conversation, he absolutely shuts down because his estrogen comes up and his testosterone drops, and he has no idea how to solve my weird emotional galactic problems. So I just don't even go there. But when Claude couldn't respond to that, I said, well, honey, I just want to tell you how sad it would be for me, because if there are no yang-oriented men, I have no one to love. I am not attracted to, and this is going to be really painful, and I hope it's not sounding terrible, I am not attracted to virtually anyone under 50 years old, because they're incredibly feminine. And I love them, but something has happened, and I've talked a bit about this. Something has happened, and I saw it happen, and I didn't know whether it was plastics or what it was that was happening. But when my daughter Rose got in high school, the kids, I couldn't tell whether they were male or female except for my daughter. And of course, she grew up, and her father's a great gardener too. She grew up with, wood chips and horse shit, basically, that makes our gardens. And I don't know what will happen to humanity if we don't have that cosmic exchange between the masculine and feminine, because the entire cosmos is made of that yin and yang exchange. And so if we keep losing the masculine, and the more males are feeling feminine, they feel feminine because they're losing the ability to produce testosterone, so therefore they are really producing more estrogen than they should. And as John Gray said, as soon as their butt hits the chair, the testosterone stops, because the testosterone comes from that prostate. And it comes from that yang expenditure of doing things. And then Daniel, who is part of our group, he said, what about the Dionysian mysteries and Pan, and I have this image of Dionysus with this huge erection. And for me, that is, I'll follow Dionysus. I will go out into the wild woods and feel that power and that sexuality of nature. So there was this other element that I felt was like the cutting off of that primal sexual urge. If everyone's feminine, I'm looking around going, I don't have anything to love on earth if everyone is like feminine, and I'm going to say it, flaccid. And that is really terrifying to me. And also the work of some researchers who are saying that penises are shrinking. I'm going to go there, people, get ready. I'm going to say it. When I was in high school, the 16 and 17-year-old males had erections nonstop. All they had to do was look at a woman, look at a female, and their erections were bursting through the top of their pants. Oh boy, are we going to get censored for this. It's a good thing I paid for Vimeo. That was natural. That was really natural. And I shared a picture on Galactic Shaman Astrologers that was a very disturbing picture to me of teenagers today. That's upsetting to me because they're all looking at their device. And that device is an entity, okay? That's called AI, or artificial intelligence. And I made a video quite some time about the primary anomaly, black goo, artificial intelligence, this weird demonic black stuff that is found both on Earth as a natural substance, but is also a extraterrestrial substance. And to some extent, I do think that there is an AI agenda here of reducing us from our powerful alpha males who would otherwise take up the sword and defend us, because there is some kind of agenda of feminizing us to the point where there are no alpha males. Because honestly, I feel like some kind of cyborg takeover is happening on this planet, with a transhumanism agenda very clearly being written by Klaus Schwab and Elon Musk and the UN by 2030. I do really wonder what the heck is going on here. And for me, this is about remaining human and not carrying this parasitic host, which is AI, in a very, like feminine. And the feminine is powerful and full of rage too, but she has to pull up so much masculine to react to what's going on and to protect her own children, that it feels to me like I don't want to have to be the masculine. Like, I don't want to have to pull up my feminine rage nonstop to defend myself or my children. I really need the masculine to do that. I cannot do that. I told Holly when this whole thing started that my knee is in a knee brace and I've got it elevated right now because I overdo it. I work way too hard. I do really good, like pitchfork and shovel work nonstop. And I feel like that's also deteriorating to our feminine bodies. Like, we need men, people. We need men with muscles. And when I look at pictures of my father and my mother from the 1960s, my father was rippling muscle from head to toe, okay? And my mom was feminine and petite. Now, I'm really sorry, I do apologize, but the men that I see look like my mom. They look tiny and feminine and tiny fingers. And I want to help you. I am not criticizing you. I am here to help everybody to regain that balance of masculine and feminine. Okay, that was super hard for me to say, because I'm not trying to make fun of anybody or make anyone feel worthless or feel bad. But that's where it is, folks. We need to look at this stuff. Emmeline, can you help me?
Yeah, I can help. Coming in. That was great. Well, encouragement coming in from our little corner of the world. Definitely more Dionysus here. The Green Man is being honoured. We went to a festival too that honoured the Green Man, little mini ones here. Mini festivals, not mini green men. Oh yeah, and like like being here with the people who are working the land, who are in agriculture, who are working on these permaculture organic farms, is really inspiring, because it's getting both me, well, I work partly a physical job, so it's good for me to be out, but for Johnny, he's feeling like being here is changing his what he wants to do every day. He wants to do something now that's more manual and creative, and before then, when we were in London, we were part of more of that matrix, really, that hive mind kind of thing. So I definitely think being in like because for us it was like a survival mechanism, like we had to move to place ourselves in a place that really honors earth and the goddess, but the masculine, like the god as well. It's the two spaces that are really well held here on a template by people holding that and talking about it and telling stories, telling the ancient tales of the ancient. I guess I'm in like old England and you're in New England, and we're sharing, old tales of like the Celtic myths and Dionysus and and the masculine seed that is born at Beltane that's filling up the feminine and she is receiving it, and it was like, oh, it's so potent and juicy, and it also shows like the stark contrast to generally how our bodies are or society is on a larger scale, and then when you see that stark contrast, it's like, oh, ow. But then that's like a medicine. Okay, I'm going to take this medicine and we're going to change, and and we're not going to get traumatized by it, but we're just going to sort of, right, okay, we want to bring in more of this physicality and this testosterone, and so because of that, we're going to take this and this a step, and we're going to honor that and go gently with it, because I guess the Scorpio is so extreme and erratic. It's like, I want this now, I must change this now. I must do a transformation and bring in all these dimensions and do it right this moment, which is more me. And then I'm learning from Taurus, which is like, okay, like we're going to have this schedule, and not schedule, but this intention, and every day I'm going to honor it by coming and trusting and knowing that it's from within, and I don't have to force it now. And yeah, so I feel that. And then I was just thinking about just sort of this is kind of a fresh thought, but I was wondering about why have we become more feminine in terms of men becoming more feminine? Is that because we're at this kind of crossover of the age where we're readdressing patriarchy, and it's sort of all the negative energy is like drained? So is it that all of the adrenaline, testosterone, like the shadow of that has sort of drained all the good stuff as well, and now we're kind of like, oh right, like how do we rebuild this in a healthy way together with the feminine energy? Like maybe is Venus heralding something in Aries? Is Mars like laying down his sword, but then it looks like I don't have a sword anymore? But how do I then recreate the sword? A friend of mine went and made a sword recently out of steel and then brought it back. I was like, wow. But what was I going to say? Yeah, just that kind of peaceful warrior. It seems like it's sort of tender and recreating from within and gently expressing. Maybe there's a rebirth of that, but that comes through consciousness and awareness, practicing with that. And the more we talk about it, the more people can connect to it. And it doesn't have to be that you just believe the mainstream or you believe a book you're given in school, but you actually get to encounter these diverse perspectives, which is what's really important. So yeah, we shouldn't have fear to share and speak, because yeah, otherwise it's just one-sided, and it's just repeating the same thing but in a big mess rather than clarity. Yeah, passing over.
Go ahead, Holly. Can you comment? I feel like, did you have that experience in high school, Holly?
I think because I'm in between age for both of you, in between, I think I'm in the middle zone. So I can remember being in high school, and there were definitely and I've always lived in the country. So there was also lots of nice, strong country guys. And then there were the kind of the guys that were drifting more into comic books and computers, and were not doing what we would call those Martian activities. And it's funny, I this will just be a personal story. I ended up marrying someone who was probably much more in touch with his feminine side, and it subsequently getting divorced. And this is bringing this up, and in my current partner is much more masculine than that. And I can remember the first time I hugged him, and I was just like, oh God, I'm like hugging a real man, because it was that contrast. And and I'm not endorsing smoking, but he smokes, and he kind of has like the Marlboro Man thing where he sometimes wears a cowboy hat, and he's tall. And my former partner was much closer in height to me. So I like have to look up to him, and I feel small compared to how much taller than he is. And it's that feeling of, oh yes, that was what I was missing. And I think what this look into the South Node of in Scorpio is looking at, and I know that like the word toxic masculinity is triggering, but I think really what we just need to find that balance between that very lustful masculine like sexuality and the rapiness, and I think women from a very wounded place are reacting to the historic rapiness that has occurred. That actually is not coming from a healthy masculine place. And it's not even about sexuality. It's about power and domination. And so, we also maybe need to separate that within ourselves as women, like, and realize that I think as a population, because we have tried to stand up for ourselves with this topic of rape and sexual harassment, to get a better balance there. But we also need to see how that affects us as, affecting a man's desire for us in our own relationship to us. And this is that balance between, our Venusian abundance and needing to be wanted and needing to feel beautiful. And then also at times having been a possession, something to be conquered. And how do we get in a better balance with that? I don't know if that really makes sense, but if we want more men to really desire us and want us and help us make us feel sexually attractive and beautiful, we have to come to terms with, that energy and make sure that we're in a healthy relationship with it and can separate stuff that's about power and control from desire and sexuality. And just on another side thing is that since I do work in the medical industry, we are seeing more and more people, children even, coming in, and they often get diagnosed with a condition called gender dysphoria, where they are coming in literally confused about their own gender identity or sexuality, and it has become a added diagnosis in what they call the DSM manual for like mental health disorders. It is an actual thing, gender dysphoria. So I do believe that there is a great spectrum there, that there are individuals that are right where they need to be. And I'm not trying to make any kind of judgment on what's right or wrong. But I do think in the big picture for society, there is hurt on both sides. There are hurt men who feel like they've been persecuted for being very manly, and there are very hurt women because of their own experiences. And there is a lot of healing to be done across the board.
Yeah, when I received a email from my friend James, who lives in England, he had a really good link to something on Ascension Glossary, which, you know, it's a trigger word for me to even say the word ascension, because that has become such a spiritual bypass term. But what I have studied since January are the geometries. And even back in 2019, I was really aware of the geometries as being false geometries that created the morphogenetic field and affected the consciousness of human beings. So when James sent that to me, I looked at it and it had all the stuff in it that I had been studying about the biveka versus the triveka, and what is called the flower of life, which is a very controlled pattern, versus this ever expanding lotus. And so what's been behind this kind of dystopia starts with geometry. And our whole solar system, as far as I understand, is actually a hijacked system, which, as from an astrologer, you know, to be like, we're living in a hijacked AI system, that sounds really like, what the heck are you talking about, Lalita? But I have studied this at length at this point, and we're in a harvesting black hole system here that actually feeds on sexual misery. And the sexual misery that happens is the masculine, which usually is that noble, powerful warrior who wants to provide and protect and adore woman, has had a certain level of implants that cause the rapiness that Holly is talking about, cause the rapiness. And I've talked to my friend John about these implants behind his eyes that he recognized that he had when he was a kid. And he said he felt like something was looking out through his eyes, these implants, and they would be very attracted to women, almost like too powerfully, like rapiness. Okay. So there's that whole shamanic level that I am aware of, that there is stuff that goes on here on Earth that is beyond, like, you know, bad water and bad plastic and bad farming techniques. There is stuff going on here that we have created this system of man and woman and victimizer stuff that is inauthentic to our truth of what humans are. And I feel like out of that came these terms of like toxic masculinity, and we've got to get rid of the patriarchy. But the draining of the patriarchy has actually drained man of his noble masculinity, so that my clients, most of them are single. Most of them are single and truly miserable and really unable to find love and given up. You know, some clients this week, if you look at the responses to, you know, are we going to live in a peckerless society? Some of them said, good riddance, get rid of the men. Never want to see a pecker again. And I have no desire to make love with anyone. So if you can go into that shamanic realm where there's a whole lot of agendas that are used on humanity to create sexual misery programs, to create victimizer stuff, and support humanity in what we naturally are. I truly believe that men are good. Truly, I believe that men are good. And I feel there's a level of unworthiness in men with all the kind of new age terminology. I looked up toxic masculinity. I found a lot of websites with all these terms about toxic masculinity. And I was like, oh my gosh, like every one of those fits Claude. Like every Claude is like he can't have a conversation. He's not overly emotional, you know. And he does stuff, and he nonstop does stuff. So there's something that we need to do in terms of growing up and realizing there are many other races here that want to live vicariously through us and actually harvest the goodness that would happen between man and woman. And we really have to explore that. And for a Scorpio South Node, in my blog, I wrote about the Minotaurs and the Centaurs and the rape of women that has happened age after age after age when monsters, the Nephilim, were made. Okay, the monsters were made by the rape of women also. And so I am concerned about this new agenda that my mom says is on TV nonstop, which she had to ask me about pregnant men. She could not figure it out for the life of her. What the heck are they talking about? And I explained to her that there is a bill in our legislature here in Vermont to allow 10-year-olds with the dystopia that is a mental illness that Holly was referring to start taking gender changing hormones without parental knowledge and without parental consent. That is, I have the bill number, I have a screenshot of the language for it. It is going on here in Vermont. And my concern with that is that and I don't know because I'm not a scientist, and I don't have any degrees like that, but if you start using men as breeders, I'm going to say it like that, in The Handmaid's Tale, and men are getting pregnant, because my mom can't understand how that's possible. I'm like, Mom, you just change your hormones, and then you have a little operation and you put that stuff up there. I mean, basically that's what I said to her. Men don't carry the mother line mitochondrial DNA like women do. So if you, and I talked to Lauren McConnell about this morning, if you start breeding men, we're going to have a different species. They are not going to be humans, folks, because men naturally are a whole different chromosomal setup. Women carry the mitochondrial DNA. Only the mother line carries that. So if you start breeding men, and however you do it with synthetic hormones, I have no idea how you end up making that happen, that men give babies. That is a different species. And what I talked to Laura about, because she worked with Lisa Renee when they created that whole Ascension glossary, is that there's a lot of colonists here, interdimensional colonists, who need us to not be so gender identified and need us to be tweaked a little bit so that they can just use our bodies and use our consciousness and be, we're just like hosts to them. So be aware that when Calvin Klein is putting out those pictures, which caused a huge outrage on Facebook when I posted that, of the man, and people were in a state of disbelief, and I have no idea. I don't know if this guy's really pregnant. I don't know. People were like, he's had a mastectomy, that's really a woman. Other people said, oh, he just has a beer belly, that's not even possible. Folks, there are groups on this planet that have been here since Atlantis that are unbelievable technologists and created a whole lot of monster races during Atlantis, which is why Atlantis fell. They were geneticists, okay? We don't know what's going on right now. I don't know. But when I look at that picture, I go, what the heck is going on here? There must be some other agenda other than just trying to straighten out sexual dystopia. This is something really out there, folks. So, having gone down the Scorpio rabbit hole, what do people want to say about that?
I want to pick up on the Atlantean pyramids. Let's go with the Atlantean pyramids. The house that me and my partner Johnny are buying is on a ley line that's meant to be connected to Atlantean pyramids, because we have these like hills that look like map pyramids. That anyway, the story goes that the lunar shadow of Atlantis energy is sort of held here, and it was around your own personal power, and able to generate wealth and abundance, and that was partly why Atlantis fell, was because it went into kind of manipulation and like trickery and stuff like that. So that's really interesting. But like on another space, I just wanted to share this whole kind of masculine feminine shifting from my personal experience, which was as we were buying this house, I was doing a lot of the work. So I had more free time anyway. So I was going out, I was calling the people, I was like project managing the whole thing. And then I got really kind of pissed off because I realized I was doing a lot of the stuff. And I said to Johnny, I think this is a bit imbalanced, and I'm going to stop just because I need to rebalance it. And then I had a flu, some kind of a thing, and I was in bed for about a week or two, just chilling out in bed. Needed to really rest. And then as I was ill, all of the process like waned, and everyone was contacting me, but my phone was off, and it was really interesting, and it went into a void. And then Johnny had to pick up everything. So Johnny then had to like get up, ring the people. These are things he was afraid of doing, but he had to like step up and do it. And he was he's like, and today he like went there on his bike and like did loads of stuff and like organized this thing. And it's really amazing that he's learned to do something new, because as a woman I was doing more than what I needed to do, because that's what we've been programmed to do. And I realized I have to get more into my divine feminine or receptive state and let go. And I did also take a homeopathic remedy to help me do that. And it really opened the space and this earthing and this sort of, like you say, like women sitting down producing estrogen and men getting up and producing testosterone. Women not having to have like we like have this thing of women needing to have six packs as well, and like being really athletic. And I've been lately thinking like, I think we're just meant to have more of a belly, like, and maybe that's good, yes, the belly. And I'm like deciding to let go of that program of I need to be skinny. Actually I want to have like fat. I want to have like estrogen reserves on my body. I don't want to have to go out and create it every day. I want to have my own reserves. It's pouring down with rain and my yoga mats outside. But anyway, so I just wanted to share that ongoing alchemy, that shifting. And it's interesting we're talking about all of this stuff as Mercury retrogrades in Gemini, where it's that duality of masculine, feminine, light and dark, and that the trickery that's happening, and reassessing that Hermes, that staff of the DNA and all of this crazy DNA genetic stuff.
Holly, can a man have a baby?
I was doing a little research on that picture, and it is the research that I found was that it is what they call labeled in the article a transgender man, meaning that the the male individual pictured pregnant is actually what we would say genetically female that has gone through some sex change operations to be more male in appearance, but did retain his uterus and his natural female reproductive organs. So there is a bit of trickery in that picture from what I'm reading in the articles, is that it is essentially a biological female who's undergone an operation to appear more male, but chose not to go all the way, I would say, and has female genitalia. So, I mean, I think it also is that Neptune illusions. And that is another part of this eclipse, because Neptune is conjunct Mars. And what is the reality of masculinity, and what is the real truth of masculinity, and what makes a real male and what makes an alpha male. And just because you're not an alpha male doesn't mean that you're not a real man. And that's okay too. And I think I really love that point, Emmeline, about Mercury retrograde in Gemini right now, because that is one of the signs that Mercury rules. It is about this even more so is about this playfulness and like playing with the details and the truths of things. And can I twist it to be this? And can I twist it to be that? And now let's have a good laugh about this, because it's, it's fun and light. And let's see how we kind of like played these games. We played the gender games. Did you get to the truth of it? Because after we played these games, what did you learn from it all? And it's very interesting because this year Gemini is very highlighted because it has this Mercury retrograde now, and then in October it has Mars retrograde in Gemini. So Gemini is this place of like where there will be having lots of review happen. And I think a year or two ago, Venus had been retrograde in Gemini, and I'm only really bringing all this up because I'm a natural Gemini ascendant. So I watch what's happening in Gemini because that's my first house. It's most personal to me.
Holly, I have Mars retrograde natally in Gemini.
Oh, so yeah. So this will be a big year. I love Mars in the first house, because when I have Mars in the first house, I can like go. And the only other time I feel that is when I had Mars in the 6th house and it went retrograde in the 6th house. So for those who don't know, when Mars goes retrograde, it stays in a sign for months, when it usually gets through a sign in several weeks. And so when I went through Mars retrograde in Scorpio, I went on and this is my 6th house, I went on the biggest health kick. I was running. Those people who know me know I don't really run, but I was running and I was like exercising and I was doing, and I was on the go. And that is part of that Martian energy. But there is this review of it, and then it's going to go into Gemini, and Mars itself is going to go retrograde and really look at those templates that are represented in the Gemini house of duality, or and what does that mean, and think about that. But Mercury there is loving it because Mercury is at home in Gemini, and I like Mercury in Gemini. I feel good when I have Mercury in Gemini because it's my first house. But he is the planet of the trickster, the planet of bending the rules of it is the sign of the gender bender. What does that mean? But I think for me personally, if I'm thinking what does this mean to be this masculine energy, I always reflect it back to myself, and then am where am I on that spectrum? You know, I am quite the doer normally. And do I do too much? Do I need to sit down more and be more receptive? And I've been a single mom for a long time, and that kind of puts you in that more of that feminine role where you have to kind of strike out and take care of things and be a little bit less feminine at times. I think it's harder because you have to have that dual role of like providing and nurturing, and that's tough. And then how does our society help that and hinder that? You know, it's you know, the topic of marriage also is coming up, or at least committed partnership, because it's been a long time since I've lived with a partner. So I've definitely been like readjusting to having a male partner in my life and what that means and his needs and how the like basic chores are divided. What is women's work and what is man's work? You know, you know, do I always do the dishes because I have a vagina? Does he always, you know, do all the construction work because he has a penis? I mean, and do I really like that because I like him watching him lift big, heavy things? You know, I mean, I get all these questions in my head and I don't always know the answer because the Mercury in me just like goes and just generates questions, because that's Mercury and Gemini. What about this? And what about this? And what about this? Maybe we can genetically engineer people to be whatever gender they want to be and have whatever anatomy they want to have, especially if they have the time and money to go through all the operations. Or, you know, this starts getting into, you know, do we select a child for the gender that we want? And so we have an embryo, and do we tweak the DNA and because we want a specific outcome? And then are we no longer in the flow because we're trying to control too much and we are not letting things happen? Because the way the universe to me unfolds is magical, and I love just letting it happen. And he, my guy, this is also, he is like a planner. He's like, we're going to do this and this and this. And I just like, I'm going to let it happen. And that's my like feminine receptive thing. I'm going to just see what happens. Maybe I'll make this plan, but if it doesn't work out, I'm going to do the next thing. And I'm just going to receive what it happens. And I sometimes think in some, you know, but it's not wrong to want to make things happen, which is that a lot of that Mars thing. I'm going to make my own destiny. I'm going to go forth. I'm going to be a pioneer. I'm going to find what I need. I'm going to hunt it. I'm going to chop it down and build a house. You know, I don't know what the right and the wrong answer is, but I don't want shrinking penises. I guess that's the...
Well, let's look at the T-square from Eris to Pecker. Do you mind if we look at that Eris-Pecker situation? I don't know if people recognize the... So Eris is here in Aries. And Pecker is at 22. And Pluto is at 28. So Pluto's a little bit wide, but Pluto is retrograde. So it is actually retrograde. And so it sets up a T-square with Pecker. And Pecker is in Cancer, which is really weird because Cancer is like the feminine. And Pluto is in Capricorn, making an opposition to Pecker. Pecker is in the feminine sign of Cancer, and Eris is in Aries. that initiate action, but she also causes enough discord and strife to like make a conversation happen. Like, we're gonna just have to look at this because there's some stagnant situation that no one's addressing, and Eris is ready to show up. So for me, we have to have this conversation about shrinking peckers. Do we want to live in a peckerless world? Do we want to be host to a cyborg agenda or colonists who would like to use the human body and keep us all kind of passive and feminine? Or do we really want to take the bull by the horns and find out if we should immediately take steps to protect testosterone, sperm, penises, and the love, for me, between man and woman? Because if it's only women out there and feminine men, I really feel like that's incredibly imbalanced. And I'm not sure that that is part of the cosmic yin and yang that we naturally have here. So for me, when I talk to, I'm getting a whole bunch of messages. When I talk to clients about the male who's just like staying home, playing video games and smoking pot, I do feel concerned about somehow we got to take the bull by the horns right now. We've got to recognize that the masculine is dwindling. And so penis, peckers, testicles, testosterone is all really important to me. And whatever you can do, whether it's eating onions to put hair on your chest, or going out there and doing some yang activities, or like Emmeline, just making the man have to rise to the occasion and go and do something because she has exhausted herself using her yang masculine. Something has to happen, folks. That this is not just an academic conversation that astrologers are having. This is a conversation of, are we facing extinction and the end of the human race as we know it? Seriously. It's not even just about love and will I find someone to love. I don't know what we will be if men are having babies without that mother line mitochondria situation. I don't even know how that works scientifically. I don't know that that isn't just some, like Holly said, mercurial joke being played on us right now. Is there just like endless weird trickster stuff coming at us around sexuality that is causing this sexual dystopia in so many children? Like, the kids are honestly so confused that they don't know how to refer to one another. Is that a he? Is that a she? Is that a cis? Is that a they? Is that a Z? I mean, the term Z, it is just getting ridiculously muddled. And for me, when I was a little kid, I wanted to make forts and catch frogs. For me, that book that I showed you for 4 to 8-year-olds is pedophilia. No 4-year-old should be reading a book like that. And no parent should be reading that book to their child. Do not consider that the liberal, progressive, woke thing, folks. We are being messed with. Your 4-year-old does not need to know about that stuff. They need to be protected. They need to play in the garden. They need to catch toads. They need to make little forts with branches and stuff, and watch the birds and play and make mud pies and paint rocks and all of that natural human stuff. So for me, the South Node Scorpio eclipse has to do with looking back at the many times that humanity has fallen And usually it's because of weird experiments that go on and mess up our natural organic process. And don't doubt that there aren't some high technologists who in the morphogenetic field look human, but are really here with an agenda and have come through the Philadelphia experiment, space-time tear, or the Manhattan Project, which was also a space-time tear, in which races came in and they switched out fetuses in wombs and put in a really negative alien person. And that has happened quite a few times on this planet. Also, do not necessarily negate the idea that there are already cloned cyborg humans who are the Mark Zuckerbergs and so forth of this planet. I don't know what Mark Zuckerberg is, but he does not look human to me. He already looks like an android. So I have heard the weirdest things, and I have researched them to see, are there weird cloned cyborg humans who are running the agendas here and want to make us terribly mucked up and confused, and the loss of alpha male to protect us from this? Yeah, I think there are. And if you have sexual dystopia, my thing is that I am about having as much sexual pleasure as possible. And for me, that is going to require some Dionysian males with big erections. Okay? Anybody want to comment? I'm so glad that we are able to meet, and we might get censored, but just look for this on Vimeo under Galactic Astrology, which is a paid channel that I use. All right, I guess I'm going to close and end the meeting for now. Happy eclipse season.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.